Hello, namaste. Today we have with us Mr. Vinayak Chatterjee, Chairman of the CII's National Council on Infrastructure and Chairman Feedback Infra. Welcome to New India Junction, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon and pleased to be with you. Thank you for having me on your channel.
Thank you so much for joining us, sir. So India has registered highest ever FDI inflow of $81.72 billion in the financial year 2020-21. So what does this mean for our economy?
Well, it is certainly a moment to be celebrated. And this kind and this level and this growth in FDI in a year or in the middle of 2 years, which are internationally known to be economically stressed because of the pandemic, is, I think, a very, very welcome sign of the investors' perception of the Indian economy. I think the world outside has noticed the policy reforms. It has noticed the various steps taken to facilitate investment. And it has taken note that compared to earlier years, the ease of doing business in India has certainly improved. Now, when I say this, you will find that a lot of people inside India will criticize, will dispute, and say, where is the change? It's just the same. So while people in the box have a tendency to be overcritical, I think it is important for observers and analysts to step outside the box and see what neutral people, officially recognized, respected, neutral organizations, what do they have to say about the investment climate? Now, let's take a look at three organizations. The World Bank publishes a report called the Ease of Doing Business, right? In that report, they have said that India has climbed 17 positions from an earlier 90 to 63 now, 27 positions actually, and climbed the rankings. India is now 63, and it was earlier 17 notches lower out of 190 countries. So we have risen by 17 ranks in the very recent past as documented by the World Bank. Let's take a look at the PwC Global CEO Survey. This is a report published in January 2020, and it says that the survey of CEOs all over the world by PwC revealed that India, in their minds, is the fourth most attractive market in the world, right? And finally, let's take a look at the report of the World Economic Forum, the people who organized Davos, to where all the leading investors and industrialists flock to. In their Global Competitiveness Report 2018, they say India's ranking in global competitiveness moved up to 58 from an earlier 62, which means we are the 58th most competitive, and earlier we were 62. So it has moved up 4 ranks. Now, these are impartial, independent, international, well-renowned and regarded organizations who are not in the business of being nice to any country. They report based on their research and evidence of what they think is a factual position. So you will see the three examples that I've given, and there are many more independent rankings that do corroborate the fact that the international perception is that India has certainly improved its ease of doing business, its investment facilitation, and its policy regime. So let me stop here and we can carry on with any other questions you may have.
Yes, sir, I actually do. So I just wanted to also discuss with you some of the major sectors that attracted investments this year. To name a few are construction and infrastructure activities, computer software and hardware, and drugs and pharmaceuticals and all. So
And electrical engineering and electrical goods. Yes. Okay.
electrical goods as well. So, what role have the investor-friendly policy reforms by the current government, like in this sector, given the pandemic and everything, the industries moving out of China, the electrical manufacturing and all of that? So, like, what has facilitated this?
Okay. First, before I get into the specific sectors, let's just take a look at extending one of the earlier points that I spoke to you about, that in terms of purchase power parity, not in terms of the rupee dollar or rupee pound sterling exchange rate. When you do an economic analysis about the size of the market based on purchase power parity, India is the third largest market in the world in terms of purchase power parity. It's the third largest market. We come after China and the USA, but we are higher than even countries like Japan, Germany, Russia, UK, France. So India is the world's third largest market for goods and services. That point itself actually motivates investors who are looking to grow and develop their businesses from looking at countries where they're not present, or to invest further in countries where they're already present. So to be the third largest market in the world is a fact that you cannot ignore. No investor who is building his business can ignore this internationally. That's the overriding point. Coming to the question that you raised, I think the four important sectors that I saw where FDI has come in relatively higher than other sectors. FDI has come in, by the way, in all sectors. But if you highlight four sectors, the first one is related to IT, software and hardware. Now, I don't think this requires great explanation. Indian software engineers, Indian hardware engineers are considered the best in the world. Our companies like TCS, Wipro, Infosys, and many others are all over the world delivering value and seeing and getting their reputation and building India's reputation. So the fact that more money comes into this country to build on these companies and many others that are serving global markets as well as the domestic market is no surprise. The next is construction and infra. Now, if you see it, infra and construction is the single largest driver of growth and investment in this country. The budgetary allocations for infrastructure have been, for the last few years, record breaking. Even in the last union budget, if I can recall, the budgetary allocation for infrastructure was almost touching 5 lakh crores, and the national infrastructure pipeline envisages a pipeline of projects and investment which is roughly 111 lakh crores for 5 years by 20 lakh crores per annum. Now, when you see a market as large as 20 lakh crores per annum, you see the Indian highway sector record-breaking construction activity at 36 kilometers per day as of last fiscal year, and slowly going to touch 40. And you see the kind of work that's happening in railways, which is almost caught up, railway capex, which is almost the same as highway capex. If you see the kind of work that's happening in the energy sector, renewables, transmission, distribution, it is no surprise that the construction and infrastructure sector continues to attract such volumes of FDI. So no surprises there. And foreign companies are coming in, major PE funds are coming in and picking up in infrastructure projects, ports, airports. They're investing heavily in these, what is called brownfield operating projects also. It's not they're necessarily investing in construction companies, but I find the FDI is coming in to acquire equity in what is called operating brownfield projects. Mm-hmm. So it's a very good trend, which means as a country, we can monetize these assets and churn the capital and release capital. The next sector is drugs and pharma. I don't think any of your viewers want an explanation why people are investing here. It is very clear that it is the health sector which is now the focus of attention, and India is the world's largest vaccine producer. It is also the world's largest producer of medicines across many categories, including generics. So no surprise that foreign investment is coming in there. The last sector that caught my attention was electrical equipment. Now, if you see the target till the end of next year for renewables is 160,000 megawatts. Mm-hmm. Over and above that, there is close to 50,000 crores of investment every year being made in transmission lines. Mm-hmm. There, every state is initiating measures on distribution reform. So between renewables, transmission, and distribution reforms, which is, changing transformers, putting in smart meters, all that kind of stuff, the electrical side is also showing very, very strong growth. So it is a quick roundup of these four sectors is very logical. Mm-hmm. IT, which is hardware and software, infra and construction, pharma, electrical, these are the ones that stand out. But as I said, it is not that FDI is not coming into other sectors also. It's coming into so many other sectors. But these sectors stand out.
All right, sir. So we just spoke about infrastructure. So coming to that, there has been a lot of hullabaloo around infra projects in the country during a pandemic. So, for instance, the whole narrative around the Central Vista. So, how do you see the criticism of it? How do you see, because the thing is that it is definitely generating a lot of employment during this time, and given that it is one of the biggest infrastructure projects in the country as of now. So, how do you see the criticism around it?
No, no, the criticism is not warranted because these were projects that were, see, projects that are being announced can't be stopped. I mean, it does more harm than good. And now the debate is between lives and livelihoods. So while the entire focus of the government, rightfully so, is on the medical side of fighting the pandemic and the health infrastructure side, simultaneously, there is huge concern on preservation and growth of livelihoods. Where will livelihoods come from? One of the biggest drivers of livelihoods is the construction industry. It has one of the highest multiples for creating livelihoods, and it has one of the highest multiplier effects of derived demands for goods like steel, cement, which also then provide employment to people at a secondary and tertiary level. So infrastructure projects provide the big support to livelihoods that has to run in parallel in the debate between lives and livelihoods. So there is no, and as I said, in the middle of the first wave last year, last fiscal, hats off to NHAI, Ministry of Roads, and the EPC contractors and engineers. India reached the highest ever level of 36 kilometers per day of road construction. Just think of how many thousands and thousands and thousands of people have been employed in that. And we are now planning to, do you want that to stop? If you stop those projects, what will you gain? These people will all go home. Does that benefit the nation? You will have less demand for cement. You will have less demand for steel. You will have less demand for construction equipment. Do you want that? Does the nation want that? Obviously not. So, since infrastructure is very clearly one of the biggest drivers of growth, employment, and derived demand, it is important for us to keep pushing the agenda there, in as much as we focus all available bandwidth on fighting the pandemic. It's a very clear equation.
All right, sir. So, talking about this, the current government, 7 years, they are going to complete 7 years on 30th of May. So, how do you assess the infra projects that have happened in the last 7 years in this period?
Well, it has certainly seen a very high trajectory of growth. It has seen one of the highest foreign investments come in picking up. I mean, international PE funds, and more important than PE funds, you should see the kind of investments made by the Provident Fund and pension funds. Canadian pension funds, CPPIP, CDPQ, the Gulf investments by Abu Dhabi Investment Corporation, in NIIF, and many others. So India has certainly seen a huge degree of investment. In the last 7 years, as I said, we have had record-breaking progress in roads and highways. Railways, which used to do a capex of 30,000-40,000 crores per annum even 4-5 years ago, has a budget of 1.9 or 2 lakh crores this year, 5x. So you got record-breaking stuff in highways, you got 5x capex in railways, you got major connectivity programs for the people at the rural areas. You got almost 100% of India's villages connected by electricity in by 24/7 program. Now you have the Nal Se Jal program, where again 100% villages are being connected through pipe water supply. So I can keep giving you examples like this because each sector, I think, proves the point that sufficient attention has been put on infrastructure. And at the last budget, for example, the government has created a path-breaking new institution called a DFI, a Developmental Financial Institution, with a starting corpus of 20,000 crores and a target to do 3 to 5 lakh crores of special developmental projects in the next 5 years. So, I mean, there are a variety of, you should see how InvITs has taken off with people buying units and operating projects, etc., etc., etc. So there has been, in the last 7 years, I would give very high marks to the focus on infrastructure and the sheer level by which the levels of capex and investments have been raised, both domestic and foreign.
All right, sir. So I would also like to have quick comments from you on the Uttar Pradesh story. So the infra projects in Uttar Pradesh in the last 4 years have gathered pace, as we all are seeing, be the biggest network of expressways that was announced or the land acquisition that has happened for the Bundelkhand Expressway. So how do you see, the things happening in Uttar Pradesh, infra projects to be very specific?
same as everybody else, and you are seeing it. Very fast acquisition. The Agra-Lucknow Expressway was finished in flat 3 years. The pace of land acquisition, earlier Maharashtra was the pace setter for state driven expressways like Mumbai-Pune and more recently Mumbai-Nagpur. But UP has suddenly come straight forward with its 4 expressways with a very rapid pace of implementation of these 4. So I think the world has recognized UP for the kind of thrust it is giving on expressways, and it is there for the world to see.
So also the ease of doing business. UP, I think in the country, it ranks second when it comes to that. So what has changed? What do you think has changed in the last 4 years? In the last 2, 3 years, 4 years of the like?
Look, I personally haven't reviewed the state rankings of ease of doing business. And if what you say is right, then I would congratulate the government of Uttar Pradesh. In fact, my broad brushstroke is that many states in India are going out of their way to attract investments. UP is certainly at the forefront of that, and the results are there for people to see.
Okay. So, and before we go, I would just like to have your comments on the Northeast. So basically, I am located in the Northeast, and there has been a visible change when it comes to infrastructure projects in this region. So, be it the network of highways that was the Assam Mala, which was announced by the Assam government, and much before that as well, there's been a lot that has happened in the last 4 or 5 years with new bridges being constructed and everything. So, how do you rate the commitment of the center towards this region? Because this was neglected for the longest time.
I have, in January, I traveled by road in certain sections of the Northeast. And I must share my enthusiasm, the same enthusiasm that you have. I was amazed to see the amount of work being done on the highways and on building new bridges. Over and above that, so I saw that myself. I landed in Guwahati and then I drove around. So that story is well known, and the focus of the central government on developing the Northeast. A lot of work is also being done by the railways, by the way, on connectivity in the Northeast. I'm sure you know about that.
Yes, sir.
And finally, what is not so well known is that there is a lot of transmission lines, electric long distance transmission lines, which are also being developed, and a large portion of Assam's work the work in Assam is actually being funded by the Asian Development Bank. So across many sectors, there is a very concerted thrust on infra development that I noticed myself, particularly road, rail, and electrical transmission lines is what I saw.
All right. So that was it, sir. And it was lovely talking to you here on New India Junction.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on your channel.
Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Keep watching New India Junction.
Thank you.